Good evening, campers, dreamers, and babysitters. A fine arts painter is convinced that he is a werewolf, wreaking havoc on a small American town under the full moon. Yes, folks, this is our raw reaction review for Blackout. Luke, it's a good day. It's a good day. Maybe some would say even a good evening. Because we get to talk about a werewolf movie. That's a very rare occurrence these days. We always talk about it, how we do not see enough of these furry friends on screen anymore. I mean, when was the last big release werewolf movie? What can we think of? I don't think Blackout's necessarily a huge release, but when was the last werewolf movie we even covered? Was it Cursed?
Oh, yeah, it might have been, yeah. But did we even cover that? I don't think so.
It was first episode. We did a mini review in the first podcast.
Well, yeah, but it's we didn't go see it.
We bought it on Blu-ray. What are you talking? Anyway, I digress.
Anyway, then we talked about Silver Bullet. Fuck it.
We did. We talked about a lot of werewolf movies because we love them, and they are some of our favorite critters. So, obviously, Blackout gets announced, and we're starting to hear a little bit about this. And it's coming from Larry Fessenden, who is, obviously famous for being in like a million different roles. He's also a producer, writer, and director. The guy is kind of a jack of all trades as far as filmmaking goes. He's worked with big names. I mean, for God's sakes, he produced House of the Devil with Ty West, Stakeland, and all kinds of other things. He's just been a part of it. And he also co-wrote Until Dawn. So, and played a small role in there. Dude's all over the place. And he is a fan of like the Universal monsters, classic monster films. He already did one called Depraved, which is kind of his version of Frankenstein. So now we get to see his version of the Wolfman. And Luke, what did you think of Blackout?
Yeah, I went into this one really cold. I didn't know really what to expect. We have more misses than hits with the werewolf genre. And, watching Blackout, I gotta say, it left me wanting more, I'll be honest, in that aspect of it. It just seemed like they proposed some good elements, but it never fully got to where I want my werewolf stories to be. And I understand this is a pretty modest budget. It just seems like there were maybe some grander ideas that were held back by some maybe budgetary constraints. And I think the story-wise, it was, fairly bland for me, I guess. There wasn't really too many unique elements to it overall. So, I don't know. I think I'm somewhere in the middle with this one.
Yeah, I think I err slightly on the side of positivity with this one, and it is not just because I got to sit down and speak with the director, Larry Fessenden. So we will be playing some clips of that interview as we go through this review, so you guys can get a little bit more into his head on what was going on here. To kind of start things off with a very basic, and I'm sure you've had this all day. Where did this film start for you, Larry? Where did this come from? Like, what was the grain of the idea that got you started wanting to write and create Blackout?
Probably lying in bed looking up at that picture of Lon Chaney.
Yeah.
In those days, remember, I grew up in what was, I think it's historically called like the Monster Generation or something, because they sold all those old movies to television and then they promoted them to the kids. And then we made models and then we ate cereal called Count Chocula and all of that. So I'm older than you, but that's what happened. And I just loved these monsters. They were so much part of my DNA. But then I grew up and I started liking movies. And I liked movies by Martin Scorsese and Robert Altman and, of course, George Romero. But I'm saying that I also like movies outside of horror after a certain point. And then I couldn't leave horror behind, or what I should say is these old monsters. And I wanted to show there was still great vitality to them. Not only watching the old movies, which I never found something you could laugh at. I mean, you got a sense once they got towards the mashups that they were sort of losing a sense of urgency, but there was something so vital, and I wanted to try to transpose that into the modern world, and that's what I've been doing. And so I made a werewolf movie. I I even went to Miramax in the 80s and tried to get them to let me do Werewolf by Night, which was a comic book I
Oh,
read.
yes.
They said no. Of course, they said with you are. And then it was always percolating in my mind. I made my Frankenstein movie first. That's called it. And then, I guess like a checklist, I said, I got to finally get my werewolf on screen. And of course, I have a relationship with Brian Spears and Peter Gerner. They're my makeup guys. And it's just so fun to be able to call them and say, okay, guys, sorry, but it's got to be time to do the werewolf.
Now, I don't necessarily think it's a bad film at all. I think that I like the direction that it's going. It is choosing to air a lot closer to kind of like that older style Lon Chaney Jr.-esque style Wolfman story, where it's more about the character's kind of tragedy is more, I guess, what they're going for. The tragic character who's kind of going through a lot of horrible things. He's got a lot of issues. And, he's a werewolf on top of it. It is not necessarily the kind of werewolf film that I think you and I are eager to see, where it's a lot more in your face. It's a lot more exciting. I think there are elements to this that I can say after a previous conversation I think we both appreciate, but I just don't know if it actually really scratches that itch we're looking for.
Yeah, in looking at this film, werewolf films are great when, we're diving into ultraviolence, if that's the aspect you want to go in. I wasn't really looking for that here in terms of a high body count, anything like that, really. I thought the idea of this kind of retro Wolfman, that's what it really does feel like character design wise, and some of the elements. There are actual scenes of our character running the forest, and you instantly get those Wolfman vibes. I was looking for maybe a heavier character piece in this one to really kind of deep dive into our main character here and really start uncovering those layers of tragedy that he has went through. I just felt like, we never really got below the surface on that. I think maybe we could have really got into that deep dive and really opened up the town. There is our kind of antagonist in this as well, that is, aside from, we're not trying to solve who the Wolfman is, anything like that, but it's more so just personal issues and kind of deep-rooted family lineage in a sense. And I was hoping for again, deeper connective tissue there, but it just felt like real surface level for me. Never really kind of it never felt like I had a dog in the fight in a sense. And I was really hoping we were going to open up the town. Instead, I think a lot of the characters, some of them do stick out, but not for good reasons for me. They seem a little hammy in terms of they're as one particular character, well, maybe two, they're a duo that really kind of stick out like a sore thumb for me and kind of met with eye rolls as I do see them on screen. I was really hoping that we can open up this small town and, kind of get that Silver Bullet vibe, not necessarily the carnage that we get there, but kind of just having these different characters, kind of going through the town and really feeling like you're part of it. Instead, I just felt like I was kind of, again, just watching a film.
Yeah, and, I get the criticism with the connection. I don't know necessarily what it was for me, but I can say for a good majority of the film, I was pretty connected with our lead character. I thought that, it was a pretty interesting take that they were going with once I kind of got within the groove of things, that he was, a bit more of like that. We're going for a bit more of a serious kind of werewolf's take. And, I was into it. But as the film progressed and we kind of got to the third act, I definitely was hoping for a bigger payoff. And like you said, a little bit more of an understanding as to why he is the way he is, and a little bit more of really cementing that connection. I think maybe it could have been that potential that I actually really see with this style of a werewolf story. Because don't get me wrong, I really like a more serious, grounded take to it. I really appreciate a lot of the direction that they took, and I gotta say, the parts that I think really work for me the most are the werewolf bits. I thought that the violence was really good. I thought that the werewolf actually looked pretty great for the way they use it. And yeah, like him running through the fields and stuff at night. I love the way that's shot. I love the way it's presented. But I do sorely think that this isn't going to satisfy many audience members who maybe go in expecting, a more fun, more, I guess, exciting werewolf film. I guess that's kind of where I have to draw the line a little bit and admit to myself that, maybe some elements worked more for me, but I just see this as kind of being an acquired taste at the end of the day.
Yeah, looking at this one, I think, there are two avenues that I think werewolf fans could want. It's either a deep character heavy piece, or it's just, all out cheeky fun where we're just the body count stacking up and, it's just disposable. And, I think we got, somewhere more so in the middle with this one where you can't really lean on either side because, I think that, yes, there is a body count. It's more on the modest side, I would say.
Yes.
It's nothing like, we're going through night after night or month after month of a full moon and, we're getting these graphic scenes, that look like Terrifier or anything like that. That's not what we're getting here. And then, I think the idea that our main character, Charlie, is an artist, I thought that was rather interesting. And, from to bring up one element that I found intriguing here, there's like this animation that seems like kind of watercolor, almost like a transformation. And I thought that was rather intriguing here. It's something very creative, something you never see. And especially when you're, we talk about werewolf films, you're always, the transformation, what's that going to look like? How are they going to achieve it? And I thought, having that kind of pseudo transformation scene with this animation of watercolors really kind of melds well with, the idea that he is an artist. But I think visually it really does pop. It's something that was so compelling. It was probably one of my favorite bits, although it's only, a short little instance in the film, but it really works. It facilitates that storytelling. It feels unique. It's not something you're going to see in any other film.
Insane. But I gotta say, the effects in Blackout really left me impressed. Again, going for the Wolfman element, not losing it into a full-blown animal. Like, I love American Werewolf in London. I absolutely love that portrayal of a werewolf. But there is something really palpable about just the human wolf hybrid. And I gotta say, like, was that something that obviously you had like Brian Spears and other people on this. Was that something that you guys spent a lot of time on with a lot of different versions, or did they just kind of come to you with something and you made a few tweaks here and there?
Well, Brian knows me well enough. He knows where I'm oriented and what I'm going to want. So it was never like, hey, do you think we could have a snout? It's like, no, we're not doing that. It is based on, well, I always reference this comic book called Werewolf by Night because I really wanted to make sure people understood I'm not just riffing on Lon Chaney. It's just that I grew up with, I was a teenage werewolf. That imagery, I honestly barely know the movie, but I know the imagery, and that's what a werewolf should look like in my book. And it really was the case till the 80s, and that was fine. It was a great breakthrough, and had The Howling and American Werewolf in London, but that wasn't the definitive answer for me. And so we can just geek out on werewolves all we want, but so yeah, it was always going to be that, and it was a matter of Brian saying, well, what if we did this? We do the ears and this and that, and then we found our zone. But this was always what we were going to head towards, was to the Wolfman look, and how could we do it at a budget, and how could we do it? Well, not really a budget, but what was ours going to look like precisely. And the only thing I'll say is that, for a while we were going to have a fur suit, but then Alex got so pumped that it was almost a shame to put that, have him wear a vest. It makes me think of Robin Williams. Or maybe it's in Jaws where they look at his Richard Dreyfuss's chest wearing a sweater. So I just didn't I wanted Alex's physique to come through. And I also felt that it's a psychological movie as much as anything. It's about a guy who feels like a werewolf. So, I wanted that a little bit of tension where you're like, is this happening? Or is he, what's happening?
The aspect, there is a sequence, and this is kind of twofold because I get to mention an actor that I really enjoy, and I was super shocked to see him pop up in this. I didn't expect it, but our boy Jeremy Holm pops up in this for about 5 seconds. I love him. He's great. He doesn't get to do much here, but hell, he was there, and I just want to call it out. But the aftermath of said sequence, when they get to the car and, we see those paintings, and you really get to see what he's been kind of doing. And there is an element to this that I like, that he almost has to recall things through his art. At one point they kind of touch on that, and I think that that's a really unique element. Again, I wish they would have went a little more with that, but I think that this is definitely something that, again, not a huge budget film, but I think that what they were able to accomplish works. But yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, I wish that I could say this was a knockout, when in all reality, this is something that I might personally rewatch from time to time. I could see myself checking it out just because, again, I do like the more serious take. I think it could grow on me with more time, but I don't fault anybody for kind of checking out on this one after a little bit, because it is, again, it's not, it doesn't fire on all cylinders like I think it should, and I think that it does leave a lot on the table.
Yeah, I'll agree with that. Especially when you're dealing with that aspect of a small town. If you can't really layer this thing with deep character heavy things or that all out body count, I think you kind of lean more so into storytelling in the small town, which we got some of, but again,
Not
it
enough.
seems very, yeah, it seems like very surface level. We don't really get in those deep rooted, because I think they present a lot of interesting ideas in terms of town politics and the inner workings and how things are built, and that type of seedy underbelly of a small town, but it never fully gets there. It never feels like the stakes are that big. It just kind of almost seems like a side story, where we're kind of focusing on the Wolfman aspect, and the other stuff's just kind of going on around it. So I really wish the stakes were a little bit higher here. I do like the design of the werewolf. Again,
Yeah.
it really calling back to the classic Wolfman stuff, I thought was really well done. But story wise, it did leave me, I would say, a little more underwhelmed than I thought it was going to be.
Again, having the privilege to speak to somebody like you, it does give a lot of motivation. Being an aspiring filmmaker myself, I'm always curious to hear like kind of what the tougher side of being on set with especially stuff that I want to get into when it comes to things like doing werewolf films or monster movies. It's like there's so much you can say about like, oh, this was great, this is awesome, but I really want to know like what challenges people faced and stuff, because it's like, I know filmmaking, even just the short films I've done, it's a journey. Like you said, it's a puzzle. You're always putting things together every day, and it's like you're wearing many hats on set.
Yeah, I have a friend who said this thing, which I think is so true. You want to make as few mistakes as possible, as opposed to you want to succeed at everything. That's almost too high a bar. But you want to try not to screw up time after time. But let me say something more positive. Put your love of this stuff on screen. In other words, I'm not sure what that literally means, but it means if what you love about it, like my favorite scene, or just something I really still am moved by, is at the end. I mean, spoiler alert and all that, but just the creature going through the woods. He's suffering now, let's just say. And I watched that and I'm like, this is something, if I saw this as a kid, I would always remember it. There's just something romantic about it, or whatever. It's why I like these movies. There's something, what I'm saying, like romanticism, meaning there's something sort of tragic, the tragic hero, but he's a werewolf, but he's a monster. And that's obviously ultimately what I want to convey, is that these monsters they were my superheroes. They were my mythologies, and to be able to participate in any way in putting my version on the screen, that's what I mean by put your love on the screen for this. And sort of, when you're setting out to do it, think about what you're really responding to. And it's as simple as the lone figure in the woods suffering. That's sort of that's what I was going to say about life. That's all. You're just the lone figure in the woods suffering.
No, I'm all for that, man. I feel exactly what you're saying that they're like your superheroes, they're your mythology. I completely love and believe that. It's like monster films, especially the classics, were something that like I watched consistently. I mean, like I still do. And like I said, I'll watch anything from the biggest budget production, whatever. Like I know Blumhouse is doing their version of the Wolfman soon. I'll see that, but I'll as quickly turn on something that was made for $500 and a person and their friends over the weekend just because I love the stuff. I can't get enough of it. And I think like, oh yeah, it.
Well, I was just going to jump in. One cottage industry is Wendigo movies, and
Mhm.
there's a lot of them on YouTube. I mean, they are just what you're saying. They're truly labors of love, and it's because the Wendigo is such a mysterious specter that I think everybody sees a movie and they're like, "Well, he didn't get the essence of the Wendigo," and then they go out in the woods and they like try to get that essence. And I don't think I got it. I mean, I think my movie is haunting. I'm very proud of that movie. It's one of my favorites in terms of how it sits in the mind. But as far as the real essence of the Wendigo, that's so slippery, which is why it's cool. It's not even like a werewolf. It's something sort of more mystical. And
It-
so, but there's some cool versions on YouTube, just guys like yourself going out into the, and trying to capture it. So it is funny. That's a particular cottage industry.
Yeah, and
Absolutely.
I do get also call out. We do get Barbara Crampton in a
A lot of
small
great
role
cameos.
here. Yeah, there's a really seriously a lot of great character actors in this.
Marshall Bell
Yes.
plays like our lead antagonist, which I was absolutely happy to see.
Mm.
He's a very familiar face, especially from the 80s and early 90s. So when you see him pop up, you're going to recognize him. We had Kevin Corrigan in here as well, which
Hmm.
he's a great comedic actor. He's got perfect timing. So the cast here was really well rounded. I didn't know Barbara Crampton was going to be in this until she popped up, and I was like, really? And Jeremy Holm, of course. Always a pleasure to see him. So, cast wise, I think this thing was really well done.
Absolutely, yeah, and that was a big positive I could give the film. And yeah, I mean, I just think overall it's not perfect. It's not something that I can necessarily recommend to everybody. So I think for me, this is going to fall in a low worth a watch. I think that this is definitely something that I again said could grow on me. And I have to call it out here so that way people don't think that I'm just being biased here. I am a bit more forgiving on werewolf films because we don't get so many. And it is a genre that it's a subgenre, a character, an essence that I love. And I am, always at least happy to see one. But I mean, I have to admit, I was really expecting a lot more. And what we got scratched a little bit of those itches, but didn't get it all taken care of for me. So that's where I
Yeah.
sit with it.
Yeah, and for me, I'm gonna go with proceed with caution on this one. Yeah, it's one of those, nothing is offensively bad, just kind of mundane for me here. And especially when you kind of look at a lot of the werewolf properties that are out there, where they're, the special effects just look absolutely terrible when we really get into the sea level territories there. This one, I just had some higher hopes for, especially as we start seeing what the actual werewolf's going to look like, and I was like, okay. First hurdle, we're over that one. This isn't going to be jarring in terms of what the actual design is going to look like. So I was like, okay, now we just have to make sure the story's there. And unfortunately, it did fall short for me. I think there are a lot of great elements in the screenplay. It just didn't seem like they all gelled and clicked together. So proceed with caution for me. I think this one, it's tough because I think it's going to be middle of the road for a lot of werewolf fans. Again, you're not getting the deep character piece, you're not getting the high body count, so it's just kind of middle of the road there for you. But this one, to each their own. This may click for some, it just did not for me.
Yeah, and like I said, if you're excited for this film, I still recommend at least checking it out, giving your own shot on it. Because yeah, I mean, even us being big werewolf fans, obviously you got two similar but differing opinions. Some aspects that didn't work for Luke worked for me, some that didn't work for me worked for him. So it's like I would be really curious to see where horror fans sit with this one. But again, I think that this is right in Larry Fessenden's filmography, his wheelhouse as well, because his stuff is always a bit more on the artsier side. It's a bit more on kind of this very interesting, very style of his own. And yeah, I mean, I can't fault him for that. Not every single one of his films works for me. There are some that I am not a fan of at all. But I think that overall, this is definitely one, again, for a genre that we don't see much of. I would still say check it out this weekend. It's going to be available on streaming on Friday the 12th. So you guys can check this out along with big spider movie that we got to cover. Sting, yeah, that's coming out this weekend, so definitely looking forward to that. As well as I got a chance to see the new A24 flick Civil War, which was pretty damn good. I gotta say so myself. And also, we just talked about a new Nicolas Cage creature feature. And yeah, there's some surprising elements in there as well. So check those out. Let us know what you guys think, and let us know what you're going to watch this weekend. Lots of stuff. I mean, Jesus.
A lot of creatures.
April 12th.
Friday.
It's a monster mash for real. I'm looking forward to seeing some of these reactions. But yeah, other than that, guys, we got a lot of great stuff up on the channel. We'll close out with kind of the last segment I have here with the interview with Larry, where we discuss the potential of him reprising his role in the upcoming Until Dawn film. So if you're interested in that, yeah, we'll see. I definitely would love to see him make a cameo. It would make total sense. David F. Sandberg, we know you're watching. Make it happen. So other than that, guys, that's all we got for you. So until next time, I'm Dylan Newell.
And I'm Luke Janesco.
And remember, stay scared. One of the things that I know, I'm a bit on the younger side, so I play a lot of video games growing up. You are very famous amongst our circles for playing a part in Until Dawn, and we now know that is getting made into, obviously a feature film. Will you be returning, reprising your role? Can you say anything at all? Have you been approached?
No, I haven't been approached, and so I think all the fans should write to those filmmakers, because I could play the whatever they call him, the flamethrower guy.
Mm-hmm.
He used to be called Jack Fiddler, but never mind that. I guess Sony was worried about any copyright infringement. That was a real Wendigo hunter, and that was the name in the original script. But anyway, no, they haven't approached me. I think they should, because it's a small role. They don't need a famous person to play it, but they could have that connection to the game. Anyway, I look forward to what they'll do. Graham Resnick, my co-writer on it, we did pitch it to Sony years ago, and I think our idea was probably too meta and too they didn't go for it, or maybe they needed to percolate. It was right after the game came out. But it's really gratifying to know the kids love that game, and we put a lot of heart and soul, and then a couple of years into it. And I know that the guys at Supermassive who spearheaded the project, they really, really cared. And the irony is they wanted to make a game that felt like a movie. So the idea that now they're going to make a movie of the game it almost feels like sort of a step backwards or sideways. I'm not saying I'm not interested. I'd love to just sit back and watch it. But Graham and I, we had a little more textured idea that would sort of account for the fact that you're losing the role play. And so we sort of were trying to make up for that. Anyway, I wish them well. I wish them luck, and I hope they call.
I hope so too. But thank you, Larry. I do have to wrap up. I went way over my time, so I do appreciate this. Again, this is honestly a lifelong dream to get to at least speak with you for a little bit, pick your brain a bit, and geek out about werewolves. So thank you for sitting down with me, man. I really appreciate it.
Do the hard shit, gonna do it live. Cause Splattercast kick it every day they live. Splattercast, gonna slash your ass. Splattercast, gonna slash your ass. Splattercast, gonna slash your ass. Splattercast, gonna slash your ass.